Let's be clear about something. Donald Trump is waging a war on the American system of government. You may recall that earlier this month, his Office of Management and Budget issued a pause on all federal grants, loans, and other assistance. This affected as much as $3 trillion in funds to state, local, and tribal governments, affecting everything from women's shelters and veterans assistance programs to Meals on Wheels. Countless organizations were left adrift, scrambling for answers. Now, the only real explanation from the memo authorizing this was that this was a necessary step to root out, quote, Marxist equity, transgenderism, and Green New Deal social policies from the government. This sounds ridiculous. It sounds delusional, and it sounds delusional because it is delusional. What does Marxist equity even mean anyway?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Regardless, millions of Americans were set to suffer while the president's apparatchiks searched the federal government for the specters of their imagination, trying to see if there was some button somewhere they could find that would turn off the cultural anxieties that they felt in today's America. Soon after the pause went through, however, 23 state attorneys general sued to block it, saying that the White House did not have this kind of authority. A judge granted the injunction, and here we are, waiting for things to play out. Technically, the freeze is, well, frozen, even though the president has directed his top donor and personal lackey, Elon Musk, to do everything he can to slash spending unilaterally without the assistance or input of Congress. However, all of this ends, it should be emphasized that the president has no authority to do any of this, and he has sent us headlong into a genuine constitutional crisis. To specify, the president has no legal authority to freeze, suspend, or what's called impound congressional appropriations. It is true that there is a 1974 law, the Impoundment Control Act, which sets out a set of procedures by which the president can request to Congress rescission of funds, meaning just withdrawing funds, or reallocation of funds. But it's a very specific process. It's usually based on a rationale like, oh, I found a more efficient way to do something for you. And in fact, when supporters of the idea of an impoundment power say that, oh, it's happened before, what they're specifically referring to is a circumstance in the 1800s when Thomas Jefferson, as president, spent less than what was appropriated because he found a cheaper way to do it. But even in whatever circumstances are outlined by the law, the president still has to contact Congress, explain to Congress what the president is doing, and give a timeline for when the funds are going to be used. Any attempt to impound funds outside the parameters set by this law is on its face constitutional for the very, very simple reason that the Constitution gives Congress the full and unambiguous power of the purse. It is, in fact, the very first power enumerated under Article 1, Section 8. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. The issue of an impoundment has come up before. It came up during the presidency of Richard Nixon. Nixon, certainly a great American hero,
who's kicking who around now?
wanted to stop spending congressionally authorized funds. And various legal authorities popped up to say, no, you can't really do that. And in 1988, the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel even put out a memo kind of reflecting on past impoundment controversies and stating outright that this power simply doesn't exist for the simple reason that it would contradict and undermine the constitutional structure itself. It would be anomalous, said the Justice Department, for the president to both take care to execute the laws as per the Take Care Clause of the Constitution, but also decline to execute the laws as Congress set forth. You can't really do both. You have to choose one or the other. And the Constitution clearly lays out that the president's job is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, which is generally understood to mean the president has to execute the laws as Congress writes them, unless Congress provides the executive with discretion as to how the laws are going to be executed. Now, there's the plain text and logic of the Constitution that makes clear that impoundment is not a thing a president can do, but you can also look at the history of the Constitution to make clear that impoundment is not a thing the president can do. During the fight for ratification, when supporters and opponents of the Constitution battled it out in ratification conventions across the 13 states, supporters of the Constitution had an answer for those who worried that the Constitution gave entirely too much power to the president. The purse is in the hands of the representatives of the people, said James Madison at the Virginia Ratifying Convention, responding to Patrick Henry's fears of military despotism. They have all the appropriation of all monies. Of all monies is a funny way to say that. Alexander Hamilton made a similar point when speaking at the New York Ratification Convention. We have heard a great deal of the sword and the purse. Let us see what is the true meaning of this maxim, which has been so much used and so little understood. It is that you shall not place those powers in either in the legislative or executive singly. Neither one nor the other shall have both, because this would destroy that division of powers on which political liberty is founded, and would furnish one body with all the means of tyranny. But where the purse is lodged in one branch and the sword in another, there can be no danger. The principal aim of the 1787 Constitution was to secure the future of Republican government in the United States. It's lowercase r Republican, not the political party, but the notion of self-government bounded by rules and institutions, of self-government defined by a scheme of representation, of self-government that rests on the virtue of the people, of self-government that is defined by separation of powers and institutions that are meant to make sure that no one particular force can arrogate all the power to itself. And this is not just me speaking here. Republican political theory at the time insisted on, quote, the separate and distinct exercise of the different power of government, which to a certain extent is admitted on all hands to be essential to the preservation of liberty. That's James Madison again. The president may have wide authority to act across a number of areas, but the one thing the president cannot do is unilaterally decide what to spend and how much to spend. The president cannot spend any more or less than what Congress mandates without the explicit approval of Congress. I'm going to quote Madison again, this time from Federalist number 58, written to the New York Ratification Convention to persuade them of supporting the Constitution. This power over the purse, wrote Madison, may in fact be regarded as the most complete and effectual weapon with which any constitution can arm the immediate representatives of the people for obtaining a redress of every grievance and for carrying into effect every just and salutary measure. To upset this balance of power, to in effect give the president the power of the purse, is to fundamentally unsettle and unravel the constitutional system of the United States. The system as it exists is built on the idea that these things are separate, that they have to be separate in order to preserve liberty and freedom. A Congress that cannot force an executive to abide by its spending decisions is a Congress whose power of the purse is a nullity. It doesn't matter. It effectively doesn't exist. It's not there. So if you read the memo announcing the freeze or the pause or whatever, it stated that this was necessary so that officials could align their objectives with those of the president's will. And you see this type of phrasing all over the Trump government, that the president's will must be obeyed, that we must follow the president's will. But wait a sec, let's hold up. Let's stop.
All right, stop.
In the American system of government, the president's will doesn't direct the government. The people who serve the government don't pledge an oath to the president. They pledge an oath to the Constitution and to the American people. Everyone who serves in the government, career and political appointees alike, have a duty to obey the law and to follow the Constitution. There is no mechanism in our system by which the mystical authority of the people flows into the president and gives the president sovereign authority over everyone. That doesn't happen. That's not the United States system of government. The president is a servant of the Constitution, bound by its demands. Most presidents in our history have understood this, even when they pushed for more and greater authority, but not Trump. He sees no distinction between himself and the office, and he sees the office as a grant of unlimited power, or as he once said,
in Article 2, where I have the right to do whatever I want as president, but I don't even talk about that.
It's a thing called Article 2. Nobody ever mentions Article 2.
More importantly, Article 2 allows me to do whatever I want.
the freeze, the Elon Musk shenanigans, all of this is an attempt to make this a reality. He wants to take the power of the purse for himself. He wants to make the Constitution a grant of absolute authority. For lack of a better term, he wants to be a king. And the big question facing this country is if we're going to let him make himself a king, or if we're going to try to do something about it.